Hi friends, welcome to the second part of paper analysis. So in this paper analysis I will be discussing the next two questions, and then in the third part we will be discussing the entire paper 1, and in the fourth part we will be discussing the paper 2 of geography. So in this part let us discuss the next two questions, that is what we had studied in the what we have seen in the paper 1, question number 2 and question number 3. I told you in the first lecture, a good student or student, if you want to score good in geography, so question number 1 and 5 is compulsory. Take any of the question out of question 2 and 3, you can take both, and take one question out of the section B. So in the section B ka discussion I will take entirely in the next series of my lecture, and here I will be discussing the next two remaining question 2 and 3. Question 4 I will discuss in the third part. The reason is question 4 is the toughest, and I will have to explain you what is the periglacial landform, what are the periglacial, how to write that answer for the periglacial landform. Question number 2 is the easiest of all the question, because yahan pe the first question number 2a is the question number 2a says that discuss the forces which govern the earth movement on the earth, which govern the air movement on the earth's surface. So they are asking you to discuss the forces which govern the air movement on the earth's surface. And it is for 20 marks. So maybe we will have to write this question in around 200-250 words, and it is for the 20 marks. A simple question, a straight to forward question. So what is the air movement on the earth's surface? The vertical movement of the air on the surface of the earth, we could call it as winds, generally surface winds. So in the simple words they are asking you what are the forces that govern the movement of the winds. Which is the first important force? Coriolis. No, Coriolis is an important force, but usse pehle what should come in the answer? So you define what is the winds, that is the movement of the air on the surface of the earth is known as winds, and these are the following factors that will affect the wind ka movement. The first is the pressure gradient force. Or what is this? The first force is the pressure gradient. That is the difference between the pressure at different latitudes. That is what is the pressure gradient force. So you know that air flows from high pressure to low pressure. Make a quick diagram here that how this pressure gradient force is acting. It will form an equatorial belt of low pressure. Then there is a belt of subtropical high pressure. So that we have a subtropical high pressure belt. Why this subtropical high pressure belt? Why this equatorial low pressure belt? Obviously a most simplest part of the climatology. Then we have the subpolar low pressure belt. So we have here subpolar low pressure belt in this part. Subpolar low pressure belt. And lastly we have a polar high pressure belt. We have a polar high pressure belt here. Polar high and polar high, and then tell what are the winds. So the winds which flow from the subtropical high pressure belt to the subpolar low pressure belt, you can show this in the diagram itself, are known as the easterly winds or the trade winds. So mention about the trade winds here. The winds which flow from the subtropical high pressure belt to the subpolar low pressure belt are known as the westerly winds. So we have an westerly winds here. So we are drawing the westerly winds in this direction, and the third winds which originate from extremely cold polar high pressure belt to the subpolar low pressure belt are the polar easterly winds. So we have the polar easterlies which are moving in this direction. So one is the pressure gradient force. You can mention also, you should be mentioning, the greater the pressure gradient, greater will be the speed of the winds. Example we see in the tropical cyclones. Ab dusra force, we are not making the wind straight here. So which is the second force? The second force is the Coriolis force. So what does the Coriolis force do? The Coriolis force results into the deflection of the winds. Kaisa deflection? To the right hand side in the northern hemisphere and to the left hand side in the southern hemisphere. Why? You know. Why the Coriolis force is there? Coriolis force minimum at the equator, so the deflection is minimum in the equator. and in the equatorial region, 0 at the equator, minimum in the equatorial regions, maximum deflection in the poles. You can also mention that because of this, of the Coriolis force, if you want to make a diagram, you can show the diagram of a cyclone. Therefore, the cyclonic circulation is anti-clockwise in the northern hemisphere, or it is clockwise in the southern hemisphere. This is how the cyclonic circulation is occurring in the northern and the southern hemisphere. So we get the circulation here. The third force, frictional force. Frictional force will reduce the wind ka velocity. So the cold air is more denser, therefore the frictional force is more, and therefore the wind velocity is reduced. So you can write about these three forces, draw a proper representation of a diagram, and your answer is over here. So very simple answer here. That is why do not worry much about the question number 4. The next question is the slope analysis. This is the question. Any doubts in this part? So the next question is question number 2b. That is, the slope analysis has a very limited application in the slope management. Question number 2b, slope. It is asking you about the slope analysis and its limited application in the slope management. So what is the slope analysis? We already studied the slope analysis in the erosional surfaces in the development of a slope. So we say some of the slopes is rectilinear slope, some of the slope is concave, some of the slope is due to erosion. We have studied the different theories here regarding the slope development. But does that slope development ka theory, slope analysis what we study, help in managing the landslides? Help in stabilization of the slopes? No. They won't help in managing the landslides or managing in the stabilization of the slope, so that we cannot tell ki kitna water is percolating inside, what is the kind of a rock that is present here, whether that area is going to experience the landslides or not, whether that area is going to experience a mass movement or not, and therefore any of the theories of the slope analysis will not directly help in the slope management. You have to write the same thing. Now I cannot discuss this question in detail because this part have already been studied by the offline students, and this part the new students who are sitting here will be studying in the slope management part. So abhi agar if I use some of the jargonized word, it will confuse you, but you know that we study the slope analysis. We will study the different types of a slope here, and when we study the different types of a slope, यहाँ पे we do not study how to manage a slope. We will just study how the slopes are formed, what are the different types of slope, whether concave, convex, etc. It has nothing to do with the slope management. Slope management is the field of landslides. It is one to manage the landslides, mass movement, etc. And therefore you have to write here that slope analysis has a limited application in the slope management. Not much is expected because this question is for the 15 marks. So 150 words you can mention initially about the different types of slope analysis, and then tell what are the factors that determine the stability and instability of the slope. So stability and the instability of the slope may be defined by a gradient, by the percolation of water, by the surface runoff, by the kind of the rocks, whether it has experienced weathering, etc. How the water is percolating, what is the kind of a rock here. So upar there may be a permeable layer, niche there may be a soft rock like clay, and again impermeable layer. So it will result into kya hoga, zameen dhas jayegi if there is an if there is soft rock like clay between the permeable and impermeable layer. This is not we are studying in the slope analysis, and therefore we can we cannot use it in the slope management part. The third question is most simple, that is question number 2 ka C part is most simple, and it is asking about the describe the configuration of the Pacific Ocean floor, again for the 15 marks. Now the new students, you will be studying in the oceanography. This is a direct question. So we study the ocean floor is made up of continental shelf, it is made up of continental slope, continental rise, deep ocean trenches, mid-oceanic ridge, sea mounts, some of the flat top sea mounts known as geodes. And this is present in the regions jahan pe there is ocean. So if this is an water body, so this part is known as an continental shelf. This is a slope, this is a rise, this is deep ocean trenches, and this part which is below the oceanic floor or seama is what is the mid-oceanic ridges. These are the seamounts, these are the geodes. You will understand after the plate tectonic theory where this will be present, and in oceanography hum directly padhte hai. So what is expected here? You make a diagram of the Pacific Ocean region. So in this diagram, make the Pacific Ocean region wala region here, Australia, New Zealand, and Asia and North America here, and South America here, and then describe what is, where do we find trenches. So Pacific Ocean mein, if I see trenches, describe how much of the continental shelf is there. Now we know that Pacific Ocean, we called it as a Pacific ring of fire, so it is being compressed from all the sides, so obviously it has very less continental shelf as compared to the Atlantic Ocean. So continental shelf kitna percent hai, continental slopes kitna hai, most of this area lacks the continental shelf. So trenches, yes, trenches are there where there is a convergent plate boundary. So we have all the trenches all along here. We have numerous trenches in this region. Mid-oceanic ridge, now the Pacific Ocean does not have a mid-oceanic ridge as such. So but there are plateaus, there are ocean ridges, there are some submarine examples, seamount is there, example geodes are there, and this is what you have to describe here in the description of the Pacific Ocean floor. Again, a direct question here. So Pacific Ocean, a diagram of an Pacific Ocean, then what is how much continental shelf is there, how many trenches are there, name of some of the trenches, then mid-oceanic ridges. So mid-oceanic ridge absent hai, but there are some of the plateaus such as an Albatross plateau. There are some of the high ridges here, high rise, that is the submarine ridges are there. Then there are some of the sea mounts, example is the Hawaiian Islands in this region, and that completes the answer. Why the mid-oceanic ridge is absent? Because it is an example of an convergent plate boundary from all the sides. This explains the question. Question number 2 easy. Usme ye question tha which was difficult, but uska application part is easy here. Coming to question number 3. The first part of the question number 3 is the most easiest of the question. Even the second part is easy. Second question, sub question of question number 3 is easy. Even the third question of question number 3 is very, very easy. Even the general studies students can write the answer of this. So when I say, what is the first question? The first question is, climate change is a reality, explain with suitable examples. Question number 3, the first question is, climate change is a reality. And they have asked you the explanation with suitable examples. Which climate change they are talking about? Obviously human made climate change or an anthropogenic climate change. Is it a reality? Yes. What are the examples of this real climate change? The examples are sea level rise, melting of ice caps and glaciers, heat waves, too much of humidity in the atmosphere, therefore extreme weather events, droughts, Chennai floods, Mumbai floods, India mein example, environmental refugees, sub-Saharan African crisis, submergence of low-lying areas, then increasing floods and droughts in the past 5-6 years. This 2016 mein the greenhouse gas emissions increased by 2%, and therefore we had more and more intensive heat waves in the India. मैं सिर्फ इंडिया का एग्जांपल यहाँ पे ले रहा हूँ. Yes, that is more and more greenhouse gas emissions due to burning of coal and therefore more global warming. So what the first point here, यहाँ पे information की कमी नहीं है. Even if you do not have the subject knowledge, you can write this answer. But yes, because it is an optional का paper, you have to give a proper factual data here. So, and very open-ended and very general question. So you can mention about the extreme weather events. You can mention about the sea level rise. You can mention about the increasing temperature. That is every year temperature is breaking uska record. You can mention about the coral bleaching. You should mention about El Nino like phenomena reoccurring. You should mention about the natural forest fires. All these examples which have occurred in recent years. You should mention about Indian heat waves. You should mention about the frequent droughts which are occurring in India. Even though we receive a monsoon, there is a greater variability in the monsoon. We receive a very heavy rainfall in some days of a year and then rest of the period becomes dry. Even this year you can mention that there has been so much variability of the Indian monsoon that there have been floods in Gujarat and Rajasthan region. You should mention about the droughts in Tamil Nadu. You mention about the droughts in Maharashtra region. You can mention about the thunderstorms here, which occur now with frequent intensity in the central India. You then mention in the end, and therefore to fight the climate change. अगर अभी लिखोगे तो you mention about the Bonn summit. अगर इससे पहले लिखते तो you should mention about the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. So a simple question. That is what to write. Try. I'm sorry. Try writing the answer to this question. It will be a very direct answer here. Then question number 3B. थोड़ा टेक्निकल क्वेश्चन है. दैट इज दे आर आस्किंग यू टू डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन चेर्नोजेम एंड सीरोजेम्स. सो दे आर आस्किंग यू टू डिस्टिंग्विश बिटवीन चेर्नोजेम सॉइल एंड सीरोजेम सॉइल्स. Yes, for the first timers it will be difficult, but if you are regularly doing the paper analysis, this part is mentioned in our syllabus in the biogeography, in the soil geography part, and if you look at the past year questions, UPSC frequently asks about Chernozems, pedocols and the xerozem soils. So what is a xerozem? What you can see, these are the two kinds of the soils mentioned in the soil classification. Write something about the xerozems. Xerozem, for example, what do we mean by the xerozems? These are zonal soils. Where are these found? These are found in the desert regions of the world. So they are grayish in color. These are the gray soils found in the desert regions of the world. They have, obviously, because they are found in the desert regions of the world, they have low organic content. What are the other factors you should know? They have less in which you can mention in which soil classification they are present. They are present in aridosols. They are in part of an aridosols here. You can also mention that they grow in the regions of scanty rainfall. And Chernozems, yes, they are an example of an black soils. So they are mentioned. If you want to remember here, if they are grown in the regions of low rainfall, यहाँ पे this is nothing but an black soil. So black soil, यहाँ पे this is grayish in soil, grayish in color. यहाँ पे this black soils, they have wide cracks. Black soils, matlab first thing, obviously not in this order. You will be writing in a proper order. We are just generating the points here. and these are rich high in phosphorus and ammonia. They have high phosphorus and ammonia. They are extremely fertile. यहाँ पे in the Chernozems fertility is less. Water is required. Water content is low here. And this इसका distribution यहाँ पे it grows in the and rainfall less scanty rainfall. यहाँ पे it grows in the regions which are having around 500 millimeters of annual rainfall. You'll find these things in our notes already. So it is rich and thick. It has loose structure. It is obviously thick soil. Black soil is a thick soil. And then because this is an optional paper, obviously make a world map showing the distribution of the soil. For example, where do we find the Chernozems? We will find it in the Eurasian steppe. And where do we find this soil? We'll find this in the Sahara Desert region. So show this on the world map, draw a world map showing the soils. For example, you can draw quickly a smaller world map and you can show the distribution. That is not exactly all the distribution, but you can show some of the distribution of the Chernozems and the Cerozems soil here. So Cerozems and Eurasian steppe में Chernozems. Mark it differently. Canadian province में we will find some of an Chernozems. Cerozems here also in the regions of an arid rainfall. You can show the Cerozems also in the Australia. So this was a bit technical question, but हर एक question में एक technical होगा. जैसे slope analysis का आया. If you are finding slope analysis difficult, you can directly take paper question number 3 and then you can take 2 questions from section B. The next question in this is again a straightforward question, question number 3C, classification of plants based on the amount of water requirement. So they had asked you a classification of plants. Question number 3C asks you to classify plants on the basis of water requirement. Geography optional students, you will be happy with this question. We have done this. And the GS students, if you remember classification of plants, primary succession, secondary succession में xerophytes, mesophytes, hydrophytes. Yes, what we do here, we divide the plants की उनका water requirement पे. So low water requirement में xerophytes. That is adapted to the dry heats. High water requirement में hydrophytes. Adapted to the waterlogged conditions or waterlogging in the regions of an waterlogging. In the regions of hydric soils. What do you mean by hydric soils? Less oxygen level. And दोनों के बीच is the mesophytes. Adapted to the intermediate conditions. And what you have to write in this answer, this is the classification of plants on the basis of water requirement, adaptation of xerophytes, adaptation of mesophytes, adaptation of hydrophytes. Example, the adaptation of xerophytes, succulent stem, leaves modified to form thorns, less or tiny leaves or no leaves, जो भी cactus का adaptation है. Yes, it is a very direct question here. So, देखो question number 1, yes, you will find low energy coast difficult, you will find pseudo volcanic features difficult, but low energy coast. Q low energy coast because energy is reduced. So mangroves. Pseudo volcanic feature, for me low energy coast will be more difficult than the pseudo volcanic feature because you know what are the volcanic features. और हम example भी करते हैं लोनार lake का. That is an example of a crater lake when we do the evolution of the Earth's crust. So you can write about that. थोड़ा बहुत तो लिख सकते हो. Then the questions are easy, and question number 2 and 3. Those whose physical geography is strong, you can take both the questions, question number 2 and question number 3. If you find the physical geography difficult, you can pick up question number 3, and then you can pick up question number 5, question number 6, 7 from the paper 2, from the section B of paper 1. Sorry. So we will continue our discussion in the next class. Today it has become very late, so I'll upload the next lecture for the online students. You will be getting the next lecture on Monday. So we will discuss the remaining questions in the next lecture. Thank you very much.